There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, neither do I.
1, 2, 3, set, go.
Right now on the Power Chord Hour, it is my absolute pleasure tonight to be talking to musician, to writer, to punk rock legend, John Jughead Pierson. You know him from Screeching Weasel, Even In Blackouts, many, many other bands. And more recently, he's been doing a really, really good podcast called Jughead's Basement. And I've been doing it a while, but I feel like really getting into it lately, which I've been enjoying. So, I mean, we're having John on. I want to talk the podcast, talk music, all of that stuff. I mean, once again, a legend. There's a lot to talk about. So, John, man, how are you?
I'm good. Like I told you a little bit earlier before we aired, I'm at my mom's right now. Usually I'm in front of a nice mic in my basement, but I'm helping my mom paint the house, so I'm over there. Yeah.
No, this will be nothing wrong with that. You're working hard.
Yeah, doing good. I feel it makes me feel productive in these times of woe.
Yeah, that way about doing this show. It's like it's been kind of a way to, like, you know, you're doing something. Like if you're stuck in the house or whatever. I mean, you're also in Chicago. I'm in Western New York with just bad winters, and I'm sure you know it's like when you get some of those months where it's like it's too damn cold to do anything else. It's good to get creative. Like it's good to kind of stay in and do some of those things. You feel productive, and it's like you really can't be outside anyways. It's so bitter. There's not much else to do anyway.
Yeah, I think it was 10 degrees here today when I got up. So.
Jeez. Yeah, I think we've been about there lately. So I mean, to start off with the podcast again, you know, probably not the worst time to be doing it right now. And like I mentioned, I mean, you've been doing it a while. I know I for years have watched, like, on your YouTube page, like, you kind of go through, like, you know, albums, do the rundowns, even without people, just you do, like, the solo ones. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, take us back, like, and I guess I assume that was counted as Jughead's Basement. Like, what was the beginning of Jughead's Basement? What inspired you to kind of start doing all that, whether it be the interviews or the album rundowns and stuff? Like, what got you into doing all of that?
Yeah, it started, actually, I was just talking to Haley from the Unlovables about this. It started originally with Vapid needing a place for him to play with the Methadones and the Unlovables. They lost their venue, so I offered up my basement because Dan used to live there, so he knew about it. And I was like, well, if we're going to do that, we have to have a name for it. So I just called it Jughead's Basement. So it started off as an actual venue, which we still do occasionally.
Oh, nice.
And then I had a flood in my basement.
Ooh.
And lost a bunch of records. And that correlated with a friend of mine. I did this online thing on Facebook where I just said, I'll answer any questions completely honestly for the next hour. And I did it for a couple of nights, and it was really great. I would get kind of drunk on wine, and people would just ask me questions, and I'd be like as straightforward, as honest as possible in the moment. And it did really well. So this friend of mine said, why don't you do a podcast with it, and we'll sponsor it. So that's how it started. At first, I wanted it to be live like that, like the Facebook thing. And we tried for a couple episodes for me to present written pieces by friends of mine that have written pieces, like the Repo Man was the first one. And then also do, interviews that were already pre-recorded, but then I would do it live in the moment. But no one was listening at the time. No one was listening. So there would be like 2 or 3 people. And it was a lot of work because me and, I can't remember why I can't remember his name right now. If it comes to me during the podcast, I'll drop his name because, we're actually going to do a podcast about how it started, but, they were in another state, so it was really difficult to line it all up, have me be live, and then them playing the pre-recorded stuff. So eventually, I just started doing it all pre-recorded, and it was album dissections. Let me go back. Why I brought up the flood in my basement is the idea was when he approached me with the idea of doing a podcast. I said, well, I just lost all these records, so instead of replacing records, I want to replace memories, So I was like, I'm going to go to each one of these records and contact the people on that record and then interview them.
Oh, I love
And that's how the album dissection started.
That is really neat. That is a really, I mean, it sucks that it had to come out of that, losing your reputation. That's kind of,
Yeah.
but,
it became so much more. And, I would still do them now if they would take like months at a time. And for some reason at the time, I was making enough royalties with Weasel to not have to worry as much about spending 50 hours a week doing a podcast, you know?
oh man, I mean, some of those album dissections you do, I mean, I think it was yesterday I was listening to the Operation Ivy one, and just knowing the amount of work it takes into, I mean, just a straight interview, just one interview, but you talking to multiple people, weaving it in and out, like truly producing it, like truly, like really, I'm sure putting hours and hours into it. That that had to take some time in the beginning doing one like that.
Well, the idea for me was, in a way, I approach this with everything. I mean, we might talk about the Mitochondriacs eventually, but everything to me is, whether it's music or theater, it's considered like an art project. So a record isn't just a record. Podcast isn't just a podcast. It has to be some sort of artistic pursuit for me, and that was the way to do it. It just was hard to maintain, and then eventually I started doing them like every couple months, and then quarterly, then once a year, and now the recent one with the Smoking Popes, I have hours of interviews with all of them, narrow it down. Yeah.
I mean, which I would love to hear, and I'm sure many Popes fans, hours, that's a lot. I would love to hear what's in there, but to cut that down, that takes hours. And I don't know if people realize that, like, even if you were to get it down to like 90 minutes, that could take like 5 times that. Like, it may be a 90-minute piece in the end, but that took days and days to do.
Yeah, I was surprised. I'm going to get it out because I was surprised how genuine and excited they were to do it. Like, some of them came to my house for dinner and separately, because the idea of the podcast was I interview everyone separately so no one dominates, you know.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because that's always the thing with the band, is there's always someone like the spokesperson who always dominates, whether they want to or not. It just happens.
I also feel like you also probably get everyone's account fairly too. Like, instead of butting in, no, this is how it was, this is how it was. It's kind of neat because you kind of probably get to get it unfiltered from each one, how they react. Yeah. And then when on my good ones, I would even let the contradictions sit in there, you know, because it kind of adds to the how about memory. Because to me, it's like I said, it's an art project again. So it's like an exploration into memory. And that's why I really like doing old records that way, like records that were done quite a long time ago. That was on purpose. But when I transitioned into like straightforward interviews, it made more sense to interview people about the now, you know, what's going on right now. And I mean, I wanted to bring that up because, like, I think I was telling you, like, I know you recently had Ryan from 500 Miles to Memphis on, I had him on the show. And once I saw he was on, I didn't realize you had been doing it more frequently, like constantly having guests on. Like, really, it seems like it picked up steam. Because again, like, I'd watched them on and off throughout the years, like on YouTube. But like when it seems recently, but like, when do you think you started taking it like, all right, we're going to start doing this more regularly, make it more interview heavy, you know, get more guests on, do it more of that way?
Yeah, it wasn't really directly related to the pandemic, but it happened around the time it started. I came back from Japan and just didn't have a lot going on at the time because I had been working there for 6 years, so I didn't have a lot going on. And I just fell out of contact with a lot of friends. And Jesse Michaels actually had been in Japan, and I didn't get to see him. So just to catch up, I was like, why don't we just do a free-form interview process and just see what happens? And it went really well, and it did really well, like, you know, almost like 7,000 downloads right away. And I was like, oh, this is a neat format where I do some studying, but then I kind of just throw it away because that's how like improvisation works to me. You know, there's a reason you study structure and that theatrical movement. You know, you gain those skills, and then when you're on stage, you just throw it all away. So that was kind of the idea with these interviews, is that I would intensely study someone and then just let it all go.
I like that, and I want to actually like further down, I do want to like talk about improv and stuff with you, but like I also kind of going along with that. Do you feel like, because like watching the show, what I really like is I feel like you almost purposely like figure out different avenues to take the interview. Like you may have a musician on or like an artist or something, but I like that you go other places. Like it's not just like, yeah, you'll have the topics that are obviously going to come up when you talk about that.
Yeah.
But I feel like you also purposely have these avenues that can kind of take you down somewhere, like even like philosophical stuff, or I mean, getting into books or just different things that you may not hear from said person. Is that something that you're actively thinking about, like when you're writing questions and thinking about the person that you're having on, like when you're doing that prep, are you kind of thinking of where can I take this? Like that's not just the, you know, if I have on a former member of a band I was in, it's not just about that band that we were in.
No, I think I actively take to that place as a person. I mean, the album dissections, I would have hours and I had to narrow it down. So it became about that record. But when there isn't that restriction, I don't feel restricted at all. And my studying goes fairly simple to what I can find on the internet and asking people, you know, if people like I go to Master Genie a lot because he works with a lot of people that I end up putting on the podcast, and I'll ask him, what do most people not ask this person, or, you know. But what I've been saying recently, which is the key, I think, to what I'm doing is I'm trying to understand what punk is without asking questions about punk.
Oh, I like that. I really like that.
Yeah. So I think that's the key to it. I mean, of course, like you had said, I'm still going to ask the simple things like, you know, how did it start sometimes, you know, or how did you get into music? You know, typical questions. But I predominantly try to focus on just that, like, who is this person?
That is really interesting. And I mean, to your credit as well, like, I'm sure a lot of people like myself probably start watching your show because they know you from the music and everything. But like, there's tons of musicians who have podcasts out now. And I mean, you can only last so long on the merits of this is a musician that I like. Like, you got to be kind of good, because if it's 90 minutes of drivel, you're not, you know, are you really going to listen that whole time? Like, at some point, you're going to drop off and go, okay, that's great. I'm just going to listen to his records. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll just stick to guitar playing. Like, don't interview people. But with you, I like it because you really do. Like, you can tell there's, which, I mean, credit to you if that's just you naturally as a person, but you really take them in a different direction. I also like, I mean, because you're also now, I feel like, just starting to have on guests who, like, maybe you haven't met beforehand. Like, it seemed like before maybe it was more people you knew. Now you're having more guests that you never knew before. Like, is that kind of weirder for you going in? Like, you know, if you go interview someone that, like, I think Jarrett from Bowling for Soup, you had him on, I don't think you'd ever really talked to before, and a couple others, versus a guy you've been in a band with for, like, 30 years. Like, I mean, is that pretty different when you, like, go to approach that if you've never met the person?
It is really different, and it's a case by case basis depending on how it goes. But I do immediately do. My dad was a salesman, and I immediately take on that. What I learned from being a salesman is use someone's name a lot, because I'm really bad at names. But in this podcast, I make sure to always say the person's name. I don't shock them, but I immediately just start talking. Like, and then I'll say we're recording like 5 or 10 minutes into it, and that's not on accident. That's actually on purpose.
That's a good thing.
So people kind of know that it's a conversation, and it's already whatever you say is going to be the conversation, you know. So it gives I really like what it does to it. But ultimately, I think I'm just I admit that I think I am good at it, because I think I'm just genuinely listening to these people.
I agree. I again, like the genuine conversations, I think that's also why you can do like a 90-minute conversation. They just naturally like kind of flow. The more you interview people who you didn't know beforehand, like, is there a part of your interviewing skills and just talking to people that like are you getting better at anything? Do you feel like doing that? Like, again, talking to people you didn't know beforehand versus people who you might have a repertoire with, or you know a little. Like, do you feel like that's helped you at all, or you've gained anything out of that? Like, do you see yourself better at it?
Yeah, I'm definitely more confident in it, but like I learned with theater, you be careful with your confidence. You know, you should always have a little bit of humility and anxiety going in. Like when I did the Vinnie Fiorello, I had nothing. I purposely had nothing, because I should know this guy. We've been in the same scene for 30 years, but we've never met, never talked. So I'm going to write down nothing. And so I think I have to do that to myself occasionally to just understand that it's about, once again, it's about listening.
Now,
and those are extreme examples. Like I said, normally I do some studying and I kind of know where I want to end it. But like I said, being an improviser, you have to, grasp the moment and realize it's going to take you somewhere you don't expect.
Was like theater and improv, did that come before music for you? Was all of that pre-music?
The beginnings of theater was in high school, but as a professional career, they happened simultaneously.
That's really neat. Like, I want to ask, like, I don't know if you listen much to the Violent Femmes. Maybe you do, because I kind of hear Even In Blackouts.
One of my favorite early bands. I actually got to see them at Harper at a community college way back in 84 or 83, somewhere in there.
Odd. That had Okay.
Yeah, I met them. I got to talk to them too. It was really cool.
I've had, and this is actually someone I would actually recommend you have on your show, because I think you two would have a lot in common. But Victor DiLorenzo, their original drummer, I've had him on the show a couple times now. And before he was in music, he did improv at, I believe it's called Milwaukee Theater X. I want to say it's called.
Yeah, never heard of it.
An improv company in Milwaukee. But I mean, he has said, like, he uses that improv and what he learned in theater and all of that through music, through like with the Violent Femmes and stuff. He said, like, even their stage show, like everything he did went back to improv. Like things that he learned back then, he can apply it to everything he did later. And I mean, you kind of already said it a little, like maybe you use it in like even interviewing, but like, yeah, do you feel like you use what you learned in improv and theater in your music and podcasts and like everything else you do? Like, is that something you can apply outside of just writing and acting?
Yeah, I think I would say that I learned a lot of those things from, I would say, both writing for theater and also for improvisation. One of the ones that I learned, which is a technique out of Improv Olympic, which is they have the thing called the Herald, where basically there's a really strong structure to it, like 2 scenes of 2, then 1 scene with the other person. It's really structured, but what comes out of it is never the same. But what they do before that is that they get in the circle and then they just throw out words, and then it's inundating the brain with different thoughts and words. And then you just let them sit on you as it goes by. And what I've noticed during the good interviews is that I allow that technique to hang with me so that themes come back organically through the interviews. Like there's always the shoe drop or like I did with Justin Insane. We ended where we started, and we were both like, "Wow, we did it!"
Full circle, baby.
Yeah, and those type of things I definitely learned from my early stages of writing for theater and improvisation. That it's listening and then recalling things that have happened.
That's really, I mean, like I have zero background in that, but like after talking to Victor now, it's very interesting. And I start thinking about it when I knew I was going to talk to you, like, because now it's really interesting because I never would have thought about before how you could apply that. But apparently, like, you can really apply what you learn in theater and improv. And I know I'm kind of all together, but how you can use all that outside of it.
Yeah, and it's good for reading people too, because often in improvisation, you have your ensemble group, but you're often thrown into a group with people you don't know, and you have to sort of understand where they're coming from, what they're going to do, and then being also willing to just go wherever it goes. That's why there's that say yes in improvisation, which doesn't mean you can't say no on stage. It just means even a no is a yes.
Do you feel like that affected you at all? Either like using just being on stage. Obviously, you like being on stage. Did that morph into your live show at all when you started like playing with Weasel and stuff? Like, do you feel like maybe you were more comfortable on stage than the rest of them, or maybe you lacked a little less stage fright from doing it, before?
And like I said, they started pretty early the same. I mean, out of high school. I mean, I did some theater in high school, but I wouldn't really call that learning how to be an actor. That's more like a bunch of kids and your friends on stage around. So I don't know. I don't think I had the skills when I first started with Weasel. I didn't even know how not to break 10 strings in one show. I had to learn everything. I learned everything simultaneously, like I said, from theater and that, how to become like a performer. They definitely fed each other, but I wouldn't say one came before the other that way.
I do want to jump into music for a second too.
Yeah.
Like,
can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, totally.
That also being in a band where I wasn't, like Ben so obviously wanted to be the external, person. So, and it was, I have it in me to be a leader and also a follower. I have no difference for one or the other. So I didn't really have the pressure to be the performer as much on stage. I would just have fun. And I didn't really think about it as performing because that's was his job.
Do you think it's good? Like, do you think that's helped you in bands, kind of being that person where, like, you're kind of saying, like, you can keep it cool? It sounds like you don't have maybe, like you don't have to be that person who's out in front. You can do there. It sounds like you probably know what you can do. You know what you're good at, and you'll do it and kind of, stick to it or whatever. Like, again, you're just not going to get cocky. Like, do you think that's helped you in your music career, being that way, not trying to be the one who's like front and center all the time?
I would like things. I think it also has probably hurt me because like a lot of people are saying, this podcast is the first time that they've really realized who I am or what I do. So there are some benefits to it too. Like the benefits to me are things that I learned from Columbia College, which is where I went to school. And it's a very ensemble driven school because that's where a lot of Sheldon Batinkin, who started Second City, was was the head of the department there. So they were really into this idea of ensemble work. So Columbia is really about an ensemble. Like, you can have your talking heads, that's fine. You can have your moment, but you're really nothing without everyone around you working. So that's always been important to me. That clashed a lot with Weasel because I really believed in that, and there's other sort of things being pulled in different directions. But I always wanted it to be more of an ensemble.
That, like, a band is everyone. It's not like one person. It's three or four.
Yeah. I admit that sometimes someone has to take the front, or the audience immediately gravitates towards the singer, the person up front. So it's a given, but it really should work as a ensemble machine, I think.
I would definitely agree with that. And talking music, we're talking podcasts. You are John Jughead, so we got to talk music, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
Like songwriting, which was also funny because I remember when I messaged you to do this, I think at first I complimented your podcast, and after I'm like, I wonder if he knows I also like his music. Like, I would think that's a given. Like, I would just think I like his podcast, and then it's like,
I would like for that not to be a given, but right now at this point, I think it is a given.
You'll get there though. I was going to say earlier, like you were saying when you originally were going live, maybe originally you weren't getting the same turnout. I feel like the more you're doing it regularly and stuff, I feel like you should go back to trying it live. I think you're getting probably even now where there's eyes on it who people would definitely, like, I would definitely tune in for a live Jughead.
Yeah. It's funny because I don't really consider myself a revolutionary, but a few times in my life, I have actually thought of doing ideas that just weren't ready yet, like acoustic punk rock or the live podcast. It just wasn't ready yet. Then Twitch came along, and then by the time that came along, I just wasn't as interested in it. But you're right. I probably will try to go back into it when I can garner a little bit more of an audience. I think a consistent audience. And
watch, you will one day. It will be the people will. They'll know you from the podcast. They'll go, wait, you also play guitar? You're in what band?
Yeah, I love that stuff because in Chicago, I'm mostly known as an actor and neo futures like theater person. So a lot of them are like, "Oh, you're in a band."
You run in different, and this is why I also think it interests me with Victor DiLorenzo is like, it sounds like you can run in different circles. Like, it's not like your whole life has been punk rock. Like you're very evenly, like, you do different things. Your life doesn't revolve all around like one thing. Like the fact you can be known in one place for that, and then another place I'm sure know you from like your music or something that you can, you have these different outlets that people know you from. That's really cool because not everybody has that. You know what I mean? A lot of people have.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, people would say this about me, and then eventually you have to pat your own ego and say, or sometimes it's not a good thing, but that I am. A lot of my friends say I'm the most artist they know. Like everything I do. I can't even go to a movie without thinking about what I could do with it or what, You can't. It's kind of draining sometimes, but
you can't turn like that creative part of your head off.
I can't. It just doesn't go off. Like even in relationships, like my relationship now with my girlfriend in Japan, I mean, just to fill our time since we're separate, we're like working on a children's book, and we do these, journals every day where we have to draw pictures for each other. So I even say to her, I go, why is everything I do have to have something to do with art? I love it, but it's a little bit draining sometimes not to just be able to sit down and relax.
You have to be productive at all times too. Does that kind of go along with that, where it's just doing something productive at all times? Or does it have to be, is it more like there's those certain things that are fulfilling? You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not.
I am, what I always used to call it is, and I still call it, is fear of contentment. So I wouldn't just say it's just being productive, because I can have a moment where I just sit and listen to a song or something, or try to, or hiking is one of my easiest ones, where I just go and hike, and Japan was amazing because I could just try to shut it off and just look. But that fear of contentment does hit me hard, like, I'm not doing anything. I need to be doing something.
That goes right into, songwriting. Are you someone who's constantly writing music? Like, is that something, or do you always have ideas in your head and you're always working on something?
No, I'm not a Dr. Frank.
Are you a burst then? Like, are you a person? Because then I feel like you'll get the people who are always writing, or you'll have those ones, you'll get bursts. Maybe you'll write a lot for a month or two and then not write again for 3 or 4 months.
That's kind of the way I am. I think we sort of danced around, like I have my hands in so many different kinds of artistic pursuits that I just have them bounce off each other, and sometimes it comes out one, sometimes it comes out something else. But I did notice that I was telling another friend this the other day, that when before I did the Mitochondriacs, I hadn't been doing any music for a while, and I noticed when I was with Nanako, my girlfriend, that I would start like singing street signs, and like we would make up these stupid songs to help me remember Japanese, and even to say we love each other, I would turn it into some chika chika peekaboo, murasaki shikibu. That means I love you. I like.
Awesome. That is so cool.
I was like, that I am driven to write, because when I'm not, I'm singing everything. So.
It sounds like you're almost like your mind pushes you. Like if you don't do it, it will make you. It'll start. Like,
yeah. I didn't know about that myself until that happened, like about a year ago.
For writing in bands, like I guess specifically, like Even In Blackouts, is that something where you come up with fully realized ideas for songs, or maybe Liz will, and then it will, you'll bring it to one another, or do you more write with each other? Is it more of a group?
It morphed over time. Once Gub Conway got into the band, who used to be in Gage and a bunch of other like really influential emo bands and stuff. Once he got in the band, it slowly became a working relation. Working. Him and I would write most of the songs. Liz has no interest in it whatsoever, but she will create her own harmonies and things like that, and we'll talk about songs. But in the beginning, it's probably one of the most intentional things I ever did. Like I knew the goal. I knew what I wanted to do with it. I knew the type of songs I wanted to do. And each record, I had to introduce myself to a new chord or a new something, and I would riff off of that. So Even In Blackouts is very meticulously planned out in many ways.
It's interesting too, because when you jump to Even In Blackouts, your songwriting Even In Blackouts to then what you like wrote in like Screeching Weasel, like, did I take it that changed a lot? Your position in the band, how much you wrote, like, that a whole new responsibility when you jumped to Even In Blackouts?
Oh yeah, I didn't really even all through Weasel. I did not consider myself a songwriter. At all, like barely even consider myself a guitarist. I just was a performer that had a guitar, and Ben would show me songs, and I would create solos occasionally, but I didn't really know how to write a song until I started Even In Blackouts. My first song I think I ever really wrote was Missing Manifesto, which is the first song for Even In Blackouts, and I wrote some stuff on the early Boogada album and the self-titled, but
you feel like you really kind of started your songwriting with Even In Blackouts. You feel
definitely, 100%.
Is there and I'm sure you feel connection with those Weasel songs, like with Even In Blackouts, is there Is there a different kind of connection with them because they're songs that like you wrote and are like probably more your baby in a lot of ways?
Oh yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, Screeching Weasel I still consider my baby, and that's one of the big problems why it still irks me, and I think about it a lot because it's my baby. But Even In Blackouts is I wouldn't say the better baby.
You playing favorites with the kids?
My favorite baby. I love them both. I dearly love them both. But when I'm sick and dying in my bed, I want the Even In Blackouts baby by my side.
Is like Screeching Weasel a step kid, and like Even In Blackouts is like a blood child? Like
yeah, but a step kid that I was there from the beginning. Like I nurtured I taught it how to speak its first words.
You were there from the get-go. Maybe that was a
I fed it.
Or calling Screeching Weasel your stepchild. But
yeah, Even In Blackouts, obviously, I mean, everything about it is resonated from my life. All the songs, especially the first couple of records, they're just my songs coded, my life coded in whatever I'm coding it in that album,
And good stuff too. Very, very good records. I do want to talk about new music, and you did bring up the Mitochondriacs, which I hate to admit, I only realized you did like about a week ago, and I'm really enjoying it. I don't know how I missed it. So I mean, let's talk about that. How did that get going? I mean, there's some neat things about it I saw with like, donating proceeds and stuff. So, I mean, but yeah. Before I get ahead of myself though, how did that get started and kind of all that good stuff? Who are you doing the band with as well?
I came back fairly depressed from Japan because I got kicked out because of visa. My visa expired and the pandemic was going on, so I couldn't be with Nanako at all. So I came home, was fairly depressed, and I had been in contact with Eddie from the Cobains for a while. Just he was a really cool guy. He would just like give me records, like a band. He loves collecting records. Not even his band, just he would give me records and take me out to eat, and he was always very helpful guy. And he just came to me one day and goes, I think you need to just come into Marky's studio and write a song with us. And so I did. But the idea was that I wanted to write them spontaneously that day and then record them that night, and then that would be it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I stuck to. This new song I'm working on is different because it's a 13-minute song. So, but we're going to record it Tuesday, and none of them know the music or anything. So there's still a spontaneous element to it. But
a 13-minute song they don't know yet?
Yeah. Well, there's a guy that wanted to put out our EP on cassette, and once again, I'm an artist, so I'm like, well, I can't just have it be that cassette. So why don't I just do a B-side that's exactly the same length but one song?
Look, you truly do have the mind of an artist. It really must never turn, which I love the output. I mean, it's great that I can be like getting ready for the interview and go, wait a second, you have new music out? Like, the fan.
Yeah, but the idea of this band it is my return to being comfortable doing Boogada period stuff because people aren't really doing it or doing it well now. So I did research my own records like Boogada and the Untitled and, Angry Samoans. And then I tapped into this anger. I had some horrible stuff going on in my life. So I tapped into that, which I don't usually like to do. I like to sort of analyze why I'm feeling that way. And this one, I allowed myself to be angry, hurt, and pretty raw. So the songs come out pretty raw, and I work through feeling bad. Like I make fun of my friends in Italy in one of those songs, and like, and I love them dearly. I'm writing it going, this is horrible. So I really just let go of I never wrote in that style before, my own stuff that was just full of vitriol.
Just pure emotion, it sounds, just raw emotion, like unfiltered.
Yeah, exactly. But always with a sense of humor. I mean,
I do hear, I do like, I can hear like some early like Weasel and stuff, and they're like, you're saying going back and listening to it, like listening to your own work, do you have to listen to it like in a way, like almost remove yourself, like listen to it like it's someone else to get in that mindset? Or can you listen to it like, oh, that was me, 30 years ago or something? You know what I mean? Like, can you listen to it kind of objectively, like just as a listener, I guess?
I think this is one of the reasons I'm probably considered a pure artist, is that I immediately, even though I can emotionally feel things from what I put out there, I immediately go into the voyeur, even to my own music. So I mean, immediately, even when I recorded a record, like Ben would be done with it, and I would live with it for months because I loved the studio, and I would listen to how we separated everything and how, but I would try to do it as remove myself. So I've always done it. I've always had to.
That's nothing new to you. That wasn't like
writing my own stuff and then producing it like in theater. I've had to be able to put on that director mask, or that, a little bit of distance from it.
That's interesting. And going back to Mitochondriacs, I mean, obviously, I was going to ask you if there's like more plans to do stuff with them. Obviously, you're doing that 13-minute song. I mean, is it something you see continually? Like, is this something that's going to keep going on, do you think?
We're discussing it right now. We're not sure because I wanted everyone to have their other bands that were more of their focus. But like anything, for some reason, people are really into this band, and we've gotten asked to do shows. And then now immediately it's becoming trouble doing shows because everyone's in other bands. So we're having a band discussion Tuesday, but I don't know. I would like to continue going on, but it also could be just getting me through this period of whatever's going on.
It seems, going back, I mean, you had what'd you release, like 4 things last year? I think on your Bandcamp there was like 4. There was like a full length, or no, an EP maybe, and then
they were all released originally as I wanted to release them as actual 7 inches, but the way the market works now, you have to be ready 6 or 7 months ahead of time, and I wanted them to be more spontaneous, but I wanted them. They're all opposite songs, like Love Hates. Never Always, But Sometimes. So I wanted them to come out together. So we would record 2 at a time, and I would release them digitally. And like I said, the other idea was that every digital sale would get donated. That doesn't count like shirts and like actual cassettes or things like that. But any digital sales would get donated to a different international funding.
That's really cool. Whose idea, like, where'd that initially come from that you guys wanted to donate proceeds like that?
That was me. I just felt, I've never been able to do it in my life because I live by the seat of my pants, so, hand to mouth. So I haven't really felt the ability to put as much into helping out the world as I could. So since it was in Marky's basement that we were recording, it was a little bit easier just to go, oh, I don't want money. Let's just donate it all, So that's what we do. I'm actually going to start doing. I just decided today I'm going to start doing that with my podcast too, with the Patreon too, donating part of that straight to.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I
think in this, like we were talking about, how I don't talk about punk as much in the podcast, but get to it by not talking about it.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like that's what I'm doing with donating money. I'm trying to, I don't know, heal the world as much as I can.
I like that. It's kind of old school, back to when labels would do, like they put out even like a comp or something like that. I think Asian Man Records had a few comps where, like, I think 15% or something went towards, different charities and stuff. It's kind of, in that vein. So it's very punk rock.
Yeah, what's easier for me that way because it really never touches my hand, so it's a lot easier to, if I had like $20 in my hand, it's going to be a little harder for me to give it to someone else.
You never see it digitally, and somewhere in between Bandcamp and the charities get it somewhere in there.
Yeah. So if the digital thing makes it easy, it never sees my hands. I just press that button to donate it,
Besides working on Mitochondriacs, I mean, any other music lately? Have you been working on Even In Blackouts, or even just songs in general that you don't know where they're going? Have you been writing?
Even In Blackouts, the next step in the progression, which made sense because the last 3 records, we've built our own studio and recorded in our own homes, and everyone works on everything. Like, no one goes home after they do their drums or guitar. Everyone would just live together. the next step logically was that everyone would start writing. So we have like a email chain of songs that we've all proposed. But everyone's living their lives right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, you seem busy with everything else. And again, like Mitochondriacs, for people who haven't heard it, there's new Jughead music right there. So definitely stuff to tide people over. And hours of you talking too. That's the other great thing, is hours and hours now. Go back and hear you talk, which is really fun. Which is really neat.
Thank you.
But I want to, we were talking earlier about like how improv, how you use it, like in whether it be music or, podcasting and stuff. But kind of going back to that, like whether you're writing a book, whether you're writing interview questions, whether you're writing lyrics, whatever it is, do you feel like all of that like is in the same part of your brain, like you using the same part of creativity no matter what you're doing? Or is there some kind of mindset that you have to kind of put yourself in depending what it is? You know what I mean? Like if you're writing.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because that's often a question I ask people as guests on my show. I used to, when I started out, was a little bit more, I wrote a play called The Road and the River, and it was when I decided that I had to go from just spontaneously writing stuff, purely like stream of consciousness, that even though it did well, I wanted to be able to talk about my work better with an audience. So that led me to the idea that I had to be a little bit more intentional. But all creativity to me is still a balance of those two. So I will allow my muse to all of a sudden start writing a song, or all of a sudden writing a book or something. But then the intentional part has to kick in and go, is this realistic? Do we have time to do this? Is this what we need to be doing right now? So I would say all my projects are intentional, but they don't always start that way.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I mean, because again, like you doing so many different things, and I mean, obviously, like some people use their creativity on one thing, so it's very interesting to kind of pick as someone who you kind of distribute it differently. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, they're all related. I mean, they're all coming from my brain, and they're all coming from memories that were stored there and overlapping. And I call creativity like the combination of two disparate ideas or pictures. There's the brain is basically all these pictures and ideas, and then your little things, synapses in between, are connecting them, and the creative brain just finds interesting ways of making disparate things make sense in the world. And that's kind of the key of it. So I feel like all the projects are related. The last thing I want to say on that is that an intentional thing I do is when I'm working on a song, I don't listen to music. When I'm working on a book, I don't read books. When I'm working on a play, I don't read, I get away from the topic or the genre that I'm involved in at that moment.
Will you, going along with that, do you find yourself, like, say you're writing a play and you kind of don't want to get in, whether maybe you don't want to get influenced by things like that, you just don't watch them. Will you find yourself getting influenced in other places? Like, will you then be getting maybe more influence from listening to music or, doing something like that you then apply to what you're working on? The time? Yeah,
I think they're all related. And there's I learned something. I did a show on this late 19th and early 20th century artist Marcel Duchamp, that talked a lot about that he did study art, but then eventually he just started reading science periodicals and philosophy, and that actually ended up affecting his writing, his art, more than studying art did. So I've basically taken that to live by. But I'll say, except for the mitochondriacs, because I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself, I actually purposely went back into the book of the catalog to rip myself off. So in that way, I had to borrow from the genre I was writing already. But in general, I don't do that.
I was going to say earlier, like when it comes to your creativity and kind of just that, whatever you want to call it, really, the thing that makes you want to create and do things, and obviously the thing that never turns off in your head. Was there a time you remember that turning on? You know what I mean? Like, was there an age or even a specific maybe event that you remember that you just kind of, after that, you wanted to create, you wanted to do things? Or is that just kind of, has that been you forever? Have you always just kind of had that kind of artistic mind since you were like a child?
Yeah, I think it's been me forever, but there was, once again, talking about this, turning something internal to external, there were a few moments where, like, a teacher would force me to do something, or my mom forced me to juggle on stage at the church, talent show, that kind of forced me to realize that I was an outwardly creative person. And that if I was going to be, that all this stuff was just going to sit in me and spoil and decay if I didn't show it to somebody. I think people helped me through that. My mom and a couple teachers in high school and stuff did that for me. But I would say, to answer your question, that creative instinct, I think, has been there since I was little. I would make them imaginary friends, and I wasn't even one of those that believed that they were real. I just loved the idea of making up things,
Improv. In a lot of ways, that's kind of improv, isn't it? You're kind of like on the spot. You're kind of like imagining what it would be. You have to make up that person in front of you.
Yeah, like one of my favorites was when I was really little. I mixed a potion. I don't know, it was like whatever, flour and Windex and stuff, and I put it in a little bottle and I put it on a gate outside. And the next day, it had fallen, but it was all dry. There was nothing there. So I was like, I just invented invisible formula. And I knew that it just, dissolved into the ground, but my creative mind was going, I did it.
Don't you act though too? Like, don't you kind of need that? Like in your head, you may know that you're on a stage and it is theater, but don't you have to convince yourself or some part of your mind that you?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't have another person's brain, so I don't know what it's like to have a less creative brain. But I feel that all brains are constantly in the aware of themselves now, but also that, what do they call it? Like that second consciousness that's aware of yourself being aware.
Yeah.
And it's, and that improvisation is it deals with that a lot. And being on stage is like that too. Like I need to stay in touch with these people because we're playing music together. But in order to do an interesting show and different every night, not fall into a pattern, I have to take chances and live in the moment. And it's always a balance of those two.
That's really interesting. And again, something that, Victor talked about like that, like how I think people who have that theater background is really cool when you get into live music because you don't want the same show. It's not about a scripted show or the same kind of thing. It's something different every.
Oh, it drives me crazy, man. It drives me crazy. Like I talk to my friends who do like Broadway and stuff. Like, how could you do that same show over and over? And then when I realize what they do is they're playing the same game but different. Their skill is so good that they find the little teeny things different every night to make it interesting for them. Whereas me, I can't say the same thing on stage twice or not. Like Dr. Frank is a genius. Like I toured with him, and on the first night I was like, oh, that's so amazing. He just spontaneously says that. And then I learned that, oh no, he's like a stand-up comedian. He nurtures it every night. And it's just basically the same thing, just twists it a little here and there to make it better. And I can't do that. I just physically get ill trying to repeating myself like that.
So you're very much then, it sounds like probably in anything you do, you probably the first thought is the best. Like your first initial idea, it's probably best to do it then. You don't want to overthink it. You don't want to do it 50 times.
Right. But then one of the themes of this podcast, probably because that's on my mind, is you eventually need to turn that into an intentional thing where or else it'll just be chaos all the time. The brain is chaos.
That's a great point, because if you don't, then it's just you're going nowhere. Rob,
no, you need to structure it. You need to structure yourself in some way or another. You have an identity that you're trying to create for yourself, so you got to try to stick to some sort of plan.
So for music coming in around the same time as theater, was guitar your first intro into music? Is guitar how you got into playing music, or did you start on something else?
I had a mandolin that I had first, so I would start. I toyed around with that for a while and never really got good at it. And then I just dropped it. And then I really didn't get another guitar until we decided to form Screeching Weasel. So I had a flute, but never learned how to play it. Like I still I'll pick it up occasionally, but I'm not very good at it. So, guitar and mandolin are probably my main instruments now.
Something I want to talk to you about too, I thought it was interesting. If I heard you correctly in your podcast, you were saying the one day or on one episode that when you started playing guitar, like in your family not to take formal lessons.
I was the first one that didn't have piano lessons. Yeah.
But getting a guitar and stuff too, you didn't really take lessons for that either, did you? Like formal lessons?
No, I had my mom hired my older brother's best friend to teach me, and it sucked. And then I quit after one day. So, he only wanted to teach me Santana songs, in which I don't hate Santana. It's just not what I was into.
Yeah, that's not including. How old were you?
8 or 9 or something.
Yeah, I could see an 8. That might not be the way to get an 8-year-old into playing.
Yeah. So then I dropped it for a long time. Like I said, I never really got back into it until Ben and I decided to form a band.
Okay, so then that's even more interesting because I was kind of going with your style and how I feel like, a lot of times people develop a style from that lack of formal learning. Do you think there's parts of your playing, and maybe, a lot of people obviously have used your sound, like you are an influential guitar player, like the sound that you have, whatever you think it might be, do you think that's created out of the way that you kind of learned like that? Like you didn't have formal lessons. It sounds like you were learning as you went along in Weasel. Like, do you think that kind of formed your, your style?
Yeah, I listen to the old records and I hear it more in my rhythm playing than in the lead playing. The lead playing, I was just trying to do what Judas Priest did and Iron Maiden did. And, I just knew that C scale and but going back, I did learn that I somehow picked up, because I hear people do like melodic solos and they're a little bit boring. Like they're hitting the right notes, but there's something that I think I instinctively had that would like wiggle a note more or, or hold one a little bit longer that I don't understand where it came from.
It's interesting you bring this up, and I think it's one of your strongest points as a guitar player. You can do a lot of single note things, but you can't, if you just do that, a lot of times it sounds terrible. You do have to, there is a talent to that and there is some skill to that where you can't, if not, you're just going down a scale basically. Like it doesn't sound at all. Like
and that's when I hear a lot of pop punk, that's the first thing I react to is like, oh, that's what I got. But there was something that I was doing that I didn't even understand. But I think the thing that I'm most proud about me is the most dangerous to my body, which is that I never really learned to play with my wrist, so I play with my full arm.
Oh wow!
So if you look at like most footage of me, my arm is just like
pretty fast tempo.
So it leads itself to actually, if you go, not that you want to go back and listen to all my records, but you can actually hear all of my strums because I'm hitting so hard. You can always pick out my guitar amongst Vapids and anyone else's because I'm hitting so hard. Like you can hear the strokes.
Are there anything else? Like, is there anything else kind of going with that like you feel like sticks out in your guitar playing? I know it might be weird to dissect your own playing, but like, are there any other things you think you do that kind of make you like when you hear it, it's you? Like, are there a few things you think you do on guitar that kind of make you go, oh, that's Jughead playing?
Yeah, I think that's the only one. I mean, I can really hear you can hear my pick hitting the strings, and I play really hard.
Are like guitars and
even in Blackouts, people were like, Gub would do he would strum because he plays with his wrist, and I'd go like because I had to go more distance. Because I'm going like this, where most people are just going.
Do you like? I guess that also goes like the action on your guitar. Do you like? Oh,
I destroy guitars. I don't even mean to, but I had one tour with Even In Blackouts where and we didn't have money, but I went through 4 guitars.
Oh my god!
Yeah, some of them are my own fault.
You'll take the blame for a couple of them.
Yeah, like the one I dropped off the top of I don't know, we were in a kid zone and I climbed on top of one of those like hamster trails, those huge human hamster trails. And I dropped it. It shattered to like 100 pieces.
Yeah, I can't see that ending good in any way. I don't think that's good in any way.
But yeah, no, I've played so hard sometimes that I just like cracked the neck on guitars and stuff like that.
Wow. Like for like gear and guitars, is that anything that you've ever like really cared much about? Or are you just someone who give me a guitar, if it sounds good, I'm good? Or are you kind of picky with gear?
I'm not picky with gear, except that I hate, I always forget the name of them because I try to put them on my head, but it's like the biggest pop punk guitar, the Ramones guitar,
is it Morse right? I'm saying it
Mose right. I hate the Mose right. I hate it. Anything else I'll play. I just hate the Mose right. But I say I'm not a materialist because I go through so many of them, but I do get emotionally attached. Like they become like human beings to me. So me and my friend talk about like bikes like this. A bike is meant to ride, and like we get a little upset with those people that have all the gear and they wash their bike every day. It's like, no, you're supposed to use it.
Yeah. Feel way about cars.
Yeah. So I use guitars. I really do use them. I don't cherish them. I don't have I never have more than one guitar at a time because they're either broken or I've destroyed them.
Nothing sacred with that. That's probably not the worst way to be. I think it's kind of, in a way you sound kind of, or would you consider yourself a minimalist at all? It sounds like again, you kind of said it, but material possessions aren't like the biggest thing to you. It doesn't sound.
Oh yeah. That might come from being, having no money growing up and having to I was in a Midwestern suburb, but my house income was like poverty level. So I just got really good at making what everyone else had naturally, so I have never really been attached to too many things at once.
Someone who travels so much too, it's probably not a terrible thing. Probably not.
No, it's not. No, I mean, I own a house. That's the one thing I own is I have a house and I have stuff in the house. So I do have stuff, but I'm not really attached to much of it, really.
I wanna go back to the beginning for a minute in the Chicago punk scene when Screeching Weasel started. Like, paint us a quick picture. Like, was the punk scene there a good one? Were there a lot of bands to play with? Were there venues to play at when you guys started, or was it kind of a difficult thing when Screeching Weasel first started?
I don't know if I would call it difficult. We got gigs, but Ben was pretty good at knowing what was going on. He had Maximum Rock and Roll, which had that scene report, so he knew what was going on. But there was a division, and it comes out in the music, and that's why a lot of suburban kids still like Hey Suburbia is still so popular, because it was so true then. There was a division between the like city punks and suburban punks, and we had to fight our way into the city basically. And then we left as soon as we could. That was kind of our other thing, is that we didn't want to be love Naked Raygun. But I talked to Jeff Pizzotti about how they went on tour a couple times, but they were really like a Chicago band. They stayed there, and me and Ben were like, we want to be on the road. We'll just be a wedding band if you just want to stay in Chicago,
Oh man.
So I have a weird relationship with the Chicago scene, because I feel like we are and are not a part of it, and never really were, because we almost became more of that Berkeley scene, because of Lookout and stuff like that.
That makes sense.
But we're a Midwestern band. I mean, I'm a Midwestern boy. 100%. So.
For like the scene back then, obviously it sounds like in the suburbs you had to go, if you wanted punk shows, you had to go to Chicago. Did there happen to be any other pockets of like a punk scene or a music scene, like any weird ones, like in little pockets of Illinois, or was it basically if you wanted punk rock, you got to go to Chicago? Oh
no, we started our own Dirty Nellies, which is where a lot of the bands that later became famous on Lookouts, played there. Dirty Nellies was in Palatine. It was just an Irish pub that I think Ben's found and then handed over to my friend Matt, who then went to McGregor's and did people like Green Day and all these other bands. But we did Dirty Nellies, and the Crim Shrine would play there, and Operation Ivy played there. Only one of only two shows in Chicago.
Wow.
Was at our place. So no, there were places in the suburbs. You just had to make it yourself, basements and stuff like that.
Was there, was there much?
The one thing about the city then was they were all over 21. So it was kind of
not all ages.
It felt cool going into the city, but it was a little bit of a waste of time because no one we knew when we were 18 could go. So we could play because they have a little rule, where you can play there, but you can't drink. You have a special thing on you, but no one our age was able to go to those shows. So
being so close to Wisconsin and Indiana, were those places pretty early on that Screeching Weasel played, just kind of in proximity?
Yeah. Green Bay, we were always, Green Bay. We were always, we immediately made friends with Master Genie in Lafayette, Indiana, outside of like Bloomington, Indiana. So yeah, it was all Midwestern, gigs at first, but then we pretty quickly, went to Berkeley, and that opened up everything. Me and Ben drove straight across the country, just the two of us, and we flew out the other two guys for one show. So we were pretty quick to get out of the Midwest.
It sounds so. Because you were even talking about the scene. If you want to stay there, we'll be a wedding band. So it sounded like pretty early on, you guys knew you wanted to do more than just be like a local band. You kind of wanted to do a little more with it.
Yeah, I think that was there was a drivenness. I analyze it a lot, and it's probably the one thing that still keeps me thinking about Ben as a human being and not as like an evil character, is that we were driven together and we achieved a lot that we only could have done together. And that was it. Like we were driven to get out, literally drove to get out of our own city and to make something of ourselves.
Where are you at age-wise there? Like around that time beginning?
I think I took 1 year off of before I went to college. So I was 18, I think 18 or 19.
Young.
When I started. Ben is 1 year younger than me, so he was a year younger. So what year was this? 86? I was 19.
And that is young. Props to you guys for having kind of that, pretty clear of a vision pretty like early on. Were you playing with a lot of bands in the beginning in that area who didn't have that foresight, who were very much didn't seem to know what they were doing outside of, just play some shows around here? Like, were you finding other people in your area?
Yeah, I won't name the bands, but we did have some conflicts with bands like in the suburbs that were upset because we were bringing in out of town bands and they were losing their like Tuesday night or whatever that they would play every week. And we're like, why do you want to play every week in the same people, same venue, same songs? Yeah. Once again, I think it's that thing in me that it's hard to repeat myself. Like it didn't make any sense to be doing that.
No, not at all. It makes you won't go anywhere with that. That's how your scene will die if it's just the same like 30 people coming out every Tuesday night.
Yeah.
You got to get fresh blood in there.
Yeah, and that's that was really started by Ben and his early recognition of maximum rock and roll really enlivened that whole suburban scene quite a bit. I read bands from all over the place.
You mentioned Master Genie a minute ago, and someone who obviously very prominent in the punk scene and really a blast hearing on your podcast. He's been on a couple times. I always just like hearing him on there. But I was going to ask, huge involvement with Weasel through the years, whether it be being in the band, recording the band, like all of that. Obviously had a huge involvement. Like, what is it about Mass that you think just meshed so well with Screeching Weasel that made you guys like work so much together?
I think for me and Ben, it was probably two different things. For Ben, Mass I don't think it's like written down anywhere, but he is a genius. Like he has all the trappings of a genius too, like going too far and perfection shows up too often, but he gets things done. And Ben, I think, really liked that about him. He just gets shit done all the time. And if there was no one to do it, he would figure out how to do it. And that's still how he is to this day. What I thought was we relate on to movies and we just liked being together. So I just gained like a really close friend. with Mass. So that's kind of why he was loved by the band, and then it made sense for him to be in it. You know, once we needed a really strong rhythm section, him and Lumley came together. You know.
Do you remember the first thing you worked on with Mass?
We we were just talking about that. He did he did the Ramones album and Wiggle. I always forget which one came first, but he those were the first where he's actually working with us as a producer engineer. We had met him before that, like after the first record release, because he somehow got the demo of our Untitled record, you know. So he called us up to play his venue back then, which was called Spud Zero.
Oh, nice.
So our working relationship started very near the beginning of the band, but his engineering took over like around Wiggle.
Yeah, that's not that far in either. He I feel like had, again, like he is all over. Sometimes I forget how much until you guys are like talking about on the podcast and stuff. Like I'm like, wow, he really did have a lot of involvement with Weasel behind the scenes and obviously with the band itself.
Yeah.
But also I had kind of a random, it's not totally random, it's kind of speaking of producers, but it's something I forgot about. On My Brain Hurts, Al Sabrante, which a lot of people might know is Green Day's first drummer, he's credited as an executive producer on that record. Like what did he do on the record? Like what was his involvement? What did he do on that to be executive producer?
He charmed Ben Weasel. He wasn't even around for that record. He was nowhere near the place for that record.
Okay.
But if you notice, every single record, Ben sticks some sort of thing in there that is fictional.
Oh, okay. So that's okay.
Yeah, so he wasn't even around, but we loved him. I loved Al Sabrante from the first time I met him. He's so funny.
Did you meet him from Green Day, just playing together? Is that how you guys met?
I can't remember what he was in then when I first met him, but the time we really started getting along was, when Green Day, Mr. T Experience, and Screeching Weasel played Larry Livermore's town. And that's when we all sort of got together.
Nice.
That was, I think, I looked it up the other day. There's like 89, 8, somewhere around there.
Early on. Very early on.
Yeah. So he had absolutely nothing to do with the production of the record.
I had forgotten all about it, saw his name on it the other day and went, okay, I gotta ask. And I was thinking, I'm like, I don't really know he did anything on this, but I gotta know why that's on the back of the cover.
Yeah.
I got my answer.
Yeah. Was he in Isocracy? I mix up a few of his band's early stuff, but I knew he was in something before Green Day that when we met him, but I can't remember what.
It's interesting.
See, that's where me and Ben are different. Ben has more of a black and white memory, like he can remember things, and mine is all like creative flow.
I kind of, I wasn't thinking about it before, but like, really that association, like with the Bay Area and Lookout Records and everything. But like looking back, you guys were, when you put it in context, it's a different time. It's pre-internet, I'm sure scenes aren't as connected as they are now. Like, how did you get in contact with Lookout? How did all of that like happen where it was like, okay, like I'm sure you probably knew bands who were on Lookout, but again, it's not as easy as just sending an email out to do this kind of stuff, No,
that's we became like the I don't know. I mean, it felt kind of magical at the time, and it's not just looking back, but there was something that in Weasel that appealed to that Berkeley intelligent punk crowd, but also being kind of Midwest and mean and funny, that really took. So when we went there, we immediately made relationships, whether it was pen pals or just phone calls. And we were the first non-California band on Lookout. So,
is that wild at all? Like, I mean, it's interesting because you starting in the late 80s, like just music in general, the industry, how you release it, how, I mean, contacting people, booking things have like changed so much. I mean, does all of that just kind of blow your mind when you look back and see how it's changed probably a million times through the years too, not just like once. It's probably a constant changing thing. Like just music, how you're an artist, all of that.
Yeah, I don't want to pull out I remember when old guy routine, but it was a lot different. I always talk about you always had to have like a shit ton of quarters in your pockets for phones and a map, a road atlas.
A map.
Everyone had to read a map.
That had to be a totally different time.
Yeah, it was,
But with Weasel, you probably hear, I mean, the influence is all over punk and stuff like that. But I want to ask you, have you ever heard like Screeching Weasel influence, or even just been told by someone they're influenced by you in a place that like you weren't expecting? You know what I mean? Like, have you ever found that influence in somewhere that wasn't just like directly punk rock, that was like you were kind of interested to see where that influence reached to?
I can't draw a straight line to it, but I turn on the radio and all I can hear is influences from my group of friends, like whether it was Operation Ivy or Crimpshrine or Green Day, any, Pink, worked with Lint, from Rancid. I mean, it's everywhere. I go to Japan and my girlfriend doesn't know anything about the music, and I'll say this and she's like, doesn't really care. But I go, I have no idea who this is, but I bet I could link it back to my band in like 2 moves. It's like the Kevin Bacon game, but it's never 7 moves. It's always like 1 or 2 moves.
It always leads back to Screeching Weasel.
Yeah, once again I wouldn't say Weasel. I think it was that group of bands that came out of that period. Throw Jawbreaker in there, throw Mr. T in there, and definitely Operation Ivy. I mean, no one was really doing what they were doing.
Still one of the best.
Crimpshrine doesn't get credit for it, but no one was doing what those guys were doing.
I mean, those are all those people you just named off are people who have tried to replicate them a million times, but no one's been successful. No one's made anything close to an Operation Ivy or a Crimpshrine.
Yeah, and this affected the whole world. It really has. That scene really affected the whole world in ways that I don't think we will even ever understand. I talked to Larry about that. It's just mind-boggling how it affected everything.
It really is wild to see the reach of influence. It's kind of neat, but it is very wild. As we kind of close up here, I did want to ask you, I mean, you obviously travel the world quite a bit, and like you said, you were just in Japan not long ago. Was like traveling, is that something that you were interested in before, like touring and music and theater, or did that kind of develop from basically your job? You know what I mean? From having to move around and tour like that, or was it something that you were always kind of into? I
own it with my high school friend, and this gets to the point. But he was the one that made the choice to move into the city from the suburbs. But once that happened like in 89 or 90, I realized that I wasn't a Midwest suburban. I wasn't meant to be there anymore. Even when I go back and visit, I see people that I went to high school with all drinking at the bars, like, a block away from the high school. And I was like, I was meant to just go away right away. And moving to the city really was that I had already toured, but it really solidified that in my soul that I was not ever going to be just planted in one place. But I always say I want to have a home. I just don't ever want to be there. You just want a home base.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. I love traveling the country in my car. I just sleep in my car wherever I can.
Yeah.
Just go.
I used to joke with friends where they thought I was joking. In high school, I would say, I'm going to get a house before I get a car. And they were like, that's funny. And I did. I still have never owned a car. I have a house because, I have that house, and then I can go away all the time. And I always have people that rent from me or friends that live there and stuff.
That is amazing. So, I mean, really, like even if you didn't have art and music to like travel around for, it sounds like you would still be out there just seeing the world, basically. You'd still be out there.
I love it.
No, I love that stuff too, and I love hearing, cause I think some people take it, they just become, I'm sure you can get jaded from it, where it's like you're just going to a city or whatever, but like do you?
Well, that's the thing is when you tour in a band, it's a little bit more, it depends on what band, and to what level you are. There are like bigger bands that probably have a harder time relating to different areas because they're just going to the hotel, going to the venue, and you don't really get to live it. But as a punk band, I'm sleeping on Italians' floors, or my German friend's floor, and we're going to wherever he likes to have lunch, or he's, so that to me never gets old. I mean, you start going, oh, that's exactly like this thing back home, but that's part of it. It's part of becoming a global person instead of like your little tribe. Is discovering the differences and the similarities.
Oh yeah, you got to get out of that comfort zone. You got to go see everything. The world is much bigger than the bar down the street from your old high school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yep.
And it affects how you treat other people in general. I think
you're better off for I really not to go off on a tangent in that way, but yeah, I think you're better off. You almost gain something from going to see people who you wouldn't normally talk to or know.
Yeah, and I understand the economic situations. I understand people that like their home and don't need to go anywhere else, but I still feel at least once in their life they should have gone on a world tour or just hitchhiked or something. Just get out of your comfort zone,
You know what more interesting people would be if they hitchhiked? You're interesting. If you hitchhike, you're probably an interesting person.
Yeah. You heard of that? John Waters did that a couple of years ago, right? Where he hitchhiked across the country.
Yeah, he wrote a book. I haven't read it yet, but I want to read that.
That's fascinating to me. I never had the guts to hitchhike, but with Screeching Weasel, we would pick them up occasionally just to shake things up a bit.
I only had to do it once when I was lost in the Allegheny National Forest. I did have to hitchhike one time, but the guy kind of forced me to because he said, "You look lost. I've driven by you 3 times, and you look like you're going in the wrong direction." And I was. So that was. But John, as we're closing up here, I want to kind of circle it back around to Jughead's Basement, 'cause is what you're doing right now. Goals. Do you feel like you have any more goals for the podcast, or is just kind of keep on going and see where it takes you?
I do have goals. I am taking this time. I really do want something that is at least a part-time job. I really am trying to make the effort to make it a real thing. I don't know how fluid, how financially beneficial something like this could ever get, but I am taking it seriously. But I never take things seriously financially unless I'm committed to them artistically. So that is my goal. But what I've learned is, and I've had a couple pretty famous people on, and I've learned that those don't grow your audience really.
No.
It's a interesting business game of slowly increasing the awareness of some things go viral automatically, but you can't control that. That's random. But what I'm learning is you have to slowly build it. Like I have to bring on people that are a little bit more famous than that other guest I had. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do that, and also balance it with what the hell I want to do. Like who's going to listen to a poet episode, like a poet episode? But that was important to me to do. I'm trying to balance the. Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to balance the two of growing the audience, but also committing to doing things that I think are cool.
Is there, do you have any people that you're, haven't been on yet that you want on? Is there like a list of people that you kind of like dream list, or maybe not even dream list, just haven't gotten around to asking yet, maybe?
Yeah, no, there's a lot. I can't even, I blew my chance of getting Keith Morris from Circle Jerks on years ago, and now I can't get him back on, and I want him. I want Fat Mike to say yes, and he keeps saying no, but he'll send me all of the other people from Fat Records, so that's kind of cool.
Right. You'll work your way up to him. You work your way up, Mike. He's the final level.
Yeah, I keep on trying to get people from Jawbreaker, and they got busy. Aaron Comet Bus, who's a good friend of mine, just doesn't do podcasts. He did my Crimshine one, which I'm like endlessly happy about, but I would love to just do a one-on-one with him.
Just a nice long-form conversation.
Yeah. So there's a lot. There's a huge list of people that I would love to have on. Yeah.
Well, nice. Outside of the podcast, I mean, is there anything else we can expect from Jughead in 2022? I mean, what else should we be on the lookout for with you?
I'm in discussions with doing a full Mitochondriacs record.
Nice.
Well, I say full, but I purposely want to do a one-sided record and call it one-sided. And have it be all songs from one perspective. So
I really like that. A creative mind. You really are.
Exactly, yeah.
Really
so
is.
It's going to be a picture disc that's one-sided, and it's called One-Sided. So.
I love it. I love it, man. I mean, you were staying busy with everything, and I mean, I guess right now, like, where can people, if you want to like tell people, where can they find you, find the podcast, like?
Yeah, that's the thing I'm always pushing most. It's just jugheadsbasementpodcast.com. So that's it. That's what it. But it's so easy to Google search me.
It's not really hard, to be honest.
No, I'm out there. So.
Well, we're gonna play a bunch of songs from your catalog. I am gonna start it with a Mitochondriac song, but I also want to ask you. I'm gonna kind of, in a way, put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Put you on the spot with this, but for one of the songs we're gonna play, it can be any of your bands. It's anything you've ever worked on. Is there a song that like kind of sticks out in your head? Maybe you have multiple ones, but is there a song that you don't feel like got enough attention that it deserved? Like, is there a song you go, this was a really good song, and it just didn't get the same attention that maybe other songs that you've done?
Oh, I would say that's every single Even In Blackouts song.
I'll just play the whole first record.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of people tell me The Writer is a song that should have got a lot more exposure. And I would say the other one is Intention from the last Romantico record. Those two I really thought, if it was the right time period, would have gotten like airplay and stuff like that. You know?
Well, then we will throw those in there. But we got to start with something new. So again, and John, really awesome. This is awesome talking. And we're going to play some music from Jughead right now, starting with the Mitochondriacs. Here is Hate. Right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. That was Even In Blackouts with The Writer. Before that was Screeching Weasel with My Brain Hurts. And opening up that block of music was the latest from Jughead. There he was with the Mitochondriacs with their song Hate. I cannot thank John enough. That was not only was that an insanely fun conversation, I mean, I can't even start to like tell you what a big fan I am of his music. I mean, I discovered, I mean, obviously, or not obviously, but probably like most people, Screeching Weasel being the first one that I was aware of. And I discovered Screeching Weasel when I was 16 back in 2009, which, I mean, really, they've been around for so long. That would have been like, I mean, they were around like 20-something years by the time I discovered them. But still, like being a 16-year-old and finding Screeching Weasel, it doesn't matter if it's 1989, 1999, 2009, like, though, you know, like, it's kind of perfect for that time. And I mean, what I was listening to and everything as well. And, you know, Cool Kids was definitely the first one I heard. And I went and bought Weasel Mania and just fell in love. I mean, really, like, just, I mean, I love all of that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you just listen back to those old Screeching Weasel records and it's like, they're really, you can hear them like all over. Like, you know, Jughead's being modest, and yes, he's right. Like, you can hear like not just Screeching Weasel, but Green Day, Mr. T Experience. You know, I would even say like the Queers and stuff. And you know, you can hear all of them in pop punk and different places as well. But like, it's just undeniable that if you go listen to Screeching Weasel and you listen to Jughead's guitar playing, it's like they're like all the pop punk bands that came after Screeching Weasel. There's such a, it's like 9 times out of 10, like the person playing guitar in that band is influenced by Jughead, and even if they don't know it directly. Because the other thing, I mean, like if you listen to bands like Blink-182, I mean, fuck, go listen to Tom DeLonge, including on those early ones. I mean, those early Blink records, he is like, you know, I mean, up there with Brett of Bad Religion. Like I would say another huge one is Jughead. You can hear in Tom's playing, and I mean,
even if you have people who somehow don't know Screeching Weasel but know Blink and are influenced by them, I mean, you may or may not know it, but like you are indirectly influenced by Jughead, you know. So yeah, really like total honor. Like not only just honor, but like what a nice guy. Like legitimately, like the second I started talking to him, could not have been nicer, could not have been friendlier. I mean, it, you know, going into, like, I was pretty nervous because, like, not that he didn't seem like he was very nice. Like, listening to his podcast, he seems like a very nice, down-to-earth guy. But still, it's Jughead. Like, it is John fucking Jughead Pierson of Screeching Weasel, of Even In Blackouts, of the Mopes. Like, I mean, punk rock royalty by all means. So, you know, for him to be as cool as he is and is nice and down to earth, I mean, what a great time just talking to him. And I will say I do apologize for the audio quality on there. I mean, I think it was bearable. I don't think it was anything ungodly, but I know it wasn't like the greatest quality. We did a Skype call, and I don't know if it was on my end or his end, but I think the connection was just not great. I mean, that's all I can figure out. I've honestly only used Skype like twice for interviews. But like both times they'd not come out, like the audio quality was not what I was expecting, because I'm using a Shure SM7B on that interview. I'm not right now, but I was during that interview when I was talking to him through Skype, and I don't know, I guess, enough about Skype, or I don't know if I'm fucking something up, but like it definitely wasn't the you know, including on my end. I actually thought he sounded better than I did, but I thought on my end, I'm like, that sure doesn't sound like you know, it doesn't sound like it's coming out of this mic, that quality. But, you know, it really doesn't, you know, at the end of the day, I think that conversation, no matter the quality, was really, really good. And I think if you're a Jughead fan, hopefully you grab something out of there. And I cannot say enough, go listen to Jughead's Basement, because look at, and I don't say this like saying it like, oh, I'm so good at podcasting or broadcasting or anything like that. By no means do I mean that when I say this, but there are so many like musicians today that have podcasts. Like they just like every motherfucker who's in a band has a podcast. And yes, that's beautiful, that's nice, but like so many of them are so bad at it. And it's not like, I mean, and I was being entirely genuine with John when I told him that, but it's like, how long can you really listen to someone? No matter, like, you might be a fan of their music, but I mean, how long can you listen to them just fucking like drivel on and on if it's not good? You know what I mean? Like, so to be able to carry a conversation and like, and also do the research and stuff, because there's a lot of like musicians who seem to have podcasts who like have their friends on or something, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that, but like do zero prep or like even treat it like it's an interview or like that you'll get anything out of it. Like it's like a conversation, but like the most mundane conversation. Like it's like water cooler fucking talk. Like I don't know. Like, so I just gotta give more credit to Jughead. Really, all I'm doing is by shitting on all these other ones. I'm just saying like John's is amazing. Like his interview skills, like he's legitimately good at interviewing. Like, I mean, the fact that he went in talking to Vinny from Less Than Jake, and which also insane that they never crossed paths in all those years. Like never, because really Less Than Jake, I think if you, in the grand scheme of things, even though Less Than Jake seemed like, at least to me, they haven't been around as long as Screeching Weasel. Screeching Weasel only started, I think, like 5 years or so before Less Than Jake. So it was like 92 for Less Than Jake, and I think Weasel was like 88, 89. But you know, him going in there with nothing planned, and then if you go listen to that interview, it's amazing. Like, so it's not easy to go in. I mean, even this, like, look, I love Jughead's music, but I didn't go into this without prepping. Like, it's insane to me that he went in like that. But that really does. That shows, like, that's the merits of him as an interviewer. Like, so I mean, total credit to him. Like, it's not, you go in listening to it because it's like, oh, it's Jughead. But it's like you will listen to like all the episodes because they're just really, really good. And he's a very interesting guy, and he is like he gets these things out of guests. Like they'll start talking about things you would never think about. You know, like hearing like him and Dan Vapid just talk about like just farthest away from like, you know, talking about like Weasel and stuff like that. Like just really like philosophical things, books and authors that they've read, and just like getting into like really some deep stuff too. Like it's really amazing. Like it's honestly, I can't say enough good stuff. So go check that out. I love that he's doing it regularly. Like I know, like I said, he's been doing it like on and off throughout the years. And like for years, I've watched some of his like solo videos and stuff on YouTube. And then more recently, when Ryan from 500 Miles to Memphis, shout out to him, who was on this show, and I saw he was on Jughead's Basement. I'm like, oh my god! Like I didn't even know Jughead was like doing interviews. Like I knew he did some like stuff on his YouTube page, but I guess I didn't realize he was doing it like almost weekly and more regularly. So I was stoked after that. After listening to Ryan's episode, which you should definitely go check out. I started going through the rest of his catalog, and some really, really good stuff on there. So go check those out. Go grab that Mitochondriacs album. And there's like 2 other EPs out there as well, and they're on their Bandcamp page. Go grab those. Proceeds do go, I can't remember where they go to, but like John said, they are donating proceeds when you go buy that. So go grab that on Bandcamp. Not only will you get some great music, but you'll be helping out a great cause, whatever that is. If I knew it off the top of my head, I would tell you, but I don't. But I'm sure it's great, and I'll make sure there's links at the in the podcast notes to go check all that out. But yeah, that is going to be this week's episode. Again, I mean, John fucking Jughead Pierson, amazing, like really, like amazing. I love everything he's done, and I really, this Mitochondriacs, like, I mean, you just heard that one song, but like there is a legit like early Weasel vibe on this, which I'm all about, and you can hear it a lot in the guitar work because of Jughead. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm excited to hear more from him, and there's no way this is his last time on the show. I refuse that. He will be back, because that was too good not to. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did it, because I really I hate listening back to interviews when I got to edit them. And not to say that I don't enjoy the conversation and the interview and everything, but it's just kind of weird listening back. Kind of like what me and Jughead were talking about, where he can remove himself from something when he's done and like listen to it, as like a kind of more like a listener or whatever. I don't think I have that so much. I maybe once the podcast's totally done, once it's like fully produced and out, I can maybe, not that I really listen to this podcast, but I can maybe listen to a little bit of it, but like editing interviews and stuff, I don't love listening to myself. But on this one, not that I like listening to myself, but like listening back to the conversation, I'm like, oh my God, like this was a really good conversation. Like I didn't, like, not just because I was talking to him, but like, and again, total credit to him. I'm not saying this, I'm not patting my own back. It was a great fucking conversation because it was Jughead, and also probably why his podcast is so good, because it doesn't matter the guest. He is just a good host. So yeah, go check out everything he is doing. And if you want to go check out everything I'm doing, at Power Chord Hour on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Go, if you would, subscribe to our YouTube page. And I don't feel like I plugged that enough. So if maybe you're listening to this on YouTube, if you are, hell yeah. If you're not, go subscribe to our YouTube page if you would. It'd be really cool. And if you've not heard, the radio show is now, it's been this way for a couple weeks now, but we're now 4 hours every Friday night on 107.9 WRFA, 8 to midnight. Very, very rad. 8 p.m. was our first time slot back in 2016. And then in 2018, we moved on over to 10 o'clock. And now we just own all of it. We own all that audio real estate. Everyone's been talking about, like, I don't know really what the hell you call it, but like basically virtual reality and like, just weird shit in the digital universe and shit like that. And I own like audio real estate in the radio universe. So yeah, 4 hours every Friday night. Really, really fun. Love doing it, playing a bunch of music. This interview will be up on the radio show this Friday night, and I'm going to play a shit ton of, just a bunch of John's bands, a bunch of other stuff. I mean, really, if you're in, it's going to be both. Like, if you're into John's music, I'm going to play a ton of that, and all the other bands I'm going to play are kind of within that vein, and I'm sure I'll play, like, bands who we talked about tonight. I'm sure I'll throw some Violent Femmes on there and some Mr. T Experience, and who knows, you'll have to tune in to hear the rest of it. But yeah, every Friday night, 8 to midnight on 107.9 WRFA in Jamestown, New York. You can also listen online at WRFALP.com. You can stream the radio station there. And yeah, if you would also, for the podcast, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to these, that would be greatly appreciated. That would really, really help out, and I would appreciate that a lot. And powerchordhour@gmail.com. You got to hit me up for anything. Hit me up there. And yeah, I guess that is going to be everything. So for this week's Power Chord Hour podcast, I'm Anthony Merchant. Thank you so much for listening.